Okay, Unit 3, Lesson 2, Adaptation of Living. What's mean by adaptation? It's a modification in the living organism's behavior, body structure, and organ functions to become more adapted to the environment which lives in, or to cope with the environmental changes like climate change, food diversity, and existence of food. Give reason: camel pad in a thick flat one to enable the camel wandering through the hot desert sand. Give reason: horse hoof ends in a strong solid end to help the horse go through the rocky soil. Okay, what are the types of adaptation? We have structural adaptation or anatomical, functional adaptation, and behavioral. Okay, structural or anatomical adaptation. It takes place in the structure of one body organ, so it's called structural. Example number 1, adaptation for limbs or motion in mammals. Whales, dolphins, and sea lions, the forelimbs become paddles, fin-like structure for swimming and diving in water. Bat, forelimbs are modified into wing-like structure to fly. Horse, front limbs are modified into legs for running on rocky soil. Camel, limbs with flat pad for walking on hot desert sand. Monkey and gorilla, bone of forelimbs and fingers are elongated to climb trees and catch. Example number 2, adaptation of legs and beaks of some birds according to nature of food. We have predatory birds like hawks and vultures. They have strong and sharp beaks to tear the prey's flesh. Their legs, 4 fingers ending with strong sharp claws, the 3 front fingers anterior and 1 back bendable finger to bounce on the prey. Okay, and the posterior fingers to control bouncing the prey. Birds that feed on shallow water worms and snails like heron and harpy, they have long thin beaks to pick up worms and snails, and long thin legs ending with thin fingers to walk in presence of water. Water birds that feed on mosses like fish, ducks, and geese. Beaks, they have wide indented beaks in the 2 sides to help them to filter food from water. Palm legs to help them in swimming. Example number 3, adaptation in insectivorous plants. Insect-eating plants. Okay, they called insectivorous plants or insect-eating plants. They are self-feeding green plants because they do photosynthesis to get carbohydrates. So they are autotrophic, but they can't absorb nitrogenous substance to make protein. So they feed on insects to get proteins from their bodies. Some parts of these plants are modified to catch and digest insects, like Dionia, Drosera, Halophila. Functional adaptation. We talk about structural or anatomical. Now we talk about functional adaptation. It's the ability of some body organ and tissues to do a specific function, like secretion of sweat on rising temperature as human body, and secretion of poison in some snakes. This is functional adaptation. Behavioral adaptation, it takes place in the activity of some animal at certain time of day or year, like activity of birds during daylight, activity of bats during night, birds migration at certain time. Give reason: adaptation in animal to help them to obtain food and escape from their enemies. Adaptation in plants to help living in different environmental conditions. Okay, this is a comparison between the 3 types of adaptation: structural adaptation, functional, behavioral. Okay, what's mean by structural? The adaptation that takes place in the structure of one body organ. Okay, functional adaptation, the ability of some body organ to do a specific function. Behavioral adaptation, the adaptation in the activity of some animal at certain times. Okay, and we have talked about these examples. Adaptation and continuity of life. Some forms of adaptation in living organisms, okay, give reason animals like dinosaurs and mammals have perished or extinct because they couldn't be adapted to environmental changes. Some forms of adaptation in living organisms like hibernation, starvation, birds migration. What's meant by hibernation? In winter, to escape from low temperature. Okay, so hibernation in winter to escape from low temperature. Some animals hide in burrows, like reptiles and insects. Some animals bury themselves in mud to stop feeding and decrease their activities, like frogs and toads. In spring, animals return to their normal activities. So hibernation occurs in winter. Okay, as starvation occurs in summer. Why? To escape from high temperature and shortage in water and rain. These occur in desert areas. They become dormant and hide in humid burrows to keep their body temperature constant, like jerboa, desert snail, and some insects. Birds migration. It is the inherited behavior in some birds. They migrate from cold polar regions to more lighted and warmer regions for reproduction. This is behavioral adaptation, like quail birds. In winter, birds migrate from cold polar regions to warmer and more light places for reproduction. In spring, birds return to their original place of living. Camouflage. What's meant by camouflage? It's the ability of some living organisms to hide from their enemies or to capture their prey. We have three examples for camouflage. Leaf insect. It looks like plant leaf in color and shape of wings. Stick insect. It looks like branches of leaves that it is clinging to it. Chameleon, it color itself with dominant color of the. And finally, camel is the desert sheep. Camel is considered one of the most adapted animals to live in desert. It is an example of all kinds of adaptation, structural, functional, and behavioral, that help it live in the hard condition of desert.